Welcome to Level Up Real Estate Investing Podcast with Robert Hyder. This is a no-fluff podcast where we dig deep into the journey of scaling your real estate investing and wholesaling business and discuss how to break into commercial real estate investing. Robert Hyder here with Level Up Real Estate Investing Podcast. For those who don't know me, I'll go through my journey a little bit here. I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, a lower middle class family. First member of my family to traditionally go to college. Out of college, I got into commercial real estate finance. It worked out really well. I was one of the youngest vice presidents of commercial real estate lending in St. Louis at the age of 25. During my time, I underwrote over $1 billion in commercial real estate deals. And then transitioned into full-time entrepreneurial real estate investing in 2013. When I got into real estate investing personally, I focused more on real estate rehabs, did some rentals and wholesales as I was trying to learn the wholesaling game. I quickly realized that the wholesaling side of the business was more scalable, focused on that heavy, and over the 6 years had exponential growth. In 2019, we will have purchased over 200 houses for wholesale, as well as running a real estate brokerage that'll do 60 million plus in transactions. We started and have since sold a residential property management company. We made a big transition into commercial real estate deals. We own and manage over 110,000 square feet of commercial space, as well as 60 plus residential doors. And the reason I go through all this for you guys is to get into the mission of this podcast, the real reason that I'm here. This is for next level thinkers. We're gonna be talking about the newest ideas, the most innovative stuff. We're gonna be talking about the 1% and 2% difference, the it factor, the edge, the stuff that really makes some investors great while other investors fail. We're gonna be digging deep into work-life balance, mindset. We're gonna be having interviews with some of the top folks in the industry, both in the residential and commercial real estate investing sectors. As well as high-level finance guys, maybe even tech guys that have scaled big businesses. If you want to be the best investor that you can be, and you want to get opened up to folks that are doing huge things, how they think, how they make decisions, how they process data, you're in the right spot. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Level Up Real Estate Investing Podcast. Very excited to be here with Steve Richards out of Indy. Before I get into his backstory, please remember, if you like the podcast, go through and like it, subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to it on. Also, please follow me on Instagram at Robert_Hyder, Robert_Hyder, Heyder. We're going to post a lot of really solid content. We're ramping that up right now, but we'll have a lot of stuff on scaling, commercial real estate investing, all kinds of other kind of stuff. But a little bit about Steve. So I've known Steve for a long time. Like I said, he's based out of Indy. He's been investing since 2004. He's done a wide array of things, but right now he's absolutely crushing it on the wholesale side and learning how to scale, or actually really digging in onto scaling and that. And we're going to dig into that deep here in a minute. He runs a RIA in Indy there as well. So without further ado, Steve, what's going on?
Hey, Rob. Thanks for having me. I love doing this kind of stuff. As you know, we're going to be pushing our time limits today because I like to talk about real estate. So this will be good.
Yeah. So we're going to keep it on a tight time frame. You both are trying to work towards that. We'll see if we can accomplish it. Fingers crossed. So what's going on? Did I get your intro right? Is all that info, all that align?
Yeah. The quick dog and pony, just so people know who they're talking to. So I got into business a lot, like most people in 2004. I had a corporate job and doing really well. Actually, I just hated it. Got bit by the entrepreneurial bug because when I had a business degree, and when I got out of school, it was during the .com race run up.
Oh yeah,
late 90s, and so I just saw these guys with, halfway decent ideas written on the back of a napkin, getting venture capital, and so we had a little tech company we started, and it was it was a lot like LinkedIn actually, and it was so funny because we were trying to raise capital, and we were flying around and meeting with VC guys, and they're like, "Listen, why are you in Indianapolis? This is never going to work." By the way, none of the .coms are making money. Did you know you don't make money on the internet?
Oh, yeah.
And another reason we don't want to talk to you is because no one on your team has taken something from 0 to 100 million. And also, just so you know, this idea of sharing your contacts online, your business contacts, is never going to fly because professional salespeople will spend their entire life building their Rolodex. Why would they share it online for everyone else to see? I mean, I was so like beat down after that. I'm like, yeah, they're right, man. Yeah. So
you heard enough times, you start believing it, huh?
Yeah, it was so crazy. But I got bit by the entrepreneur bug during that time, and actually, I played basketball, pickup basketball at the gym all the time with a guy that had gotten into real estate. Him and his dad were doing the conference rodeo. They dropped 30, 40 grand going to 4 or 5 different conferences, but weren't doing anything with it. And we didn't work together. We worked together for a while, I guess, but he never really got active. But I took it and ran with it. I was ready to do something, so started flipping houses in 2004. We got in. We started flipping houses, buying them from the banks, putting them on the MLS, selling with realtors, just normal flipping. And 6 months in, I quit. We owned multiple rentals already. We ramped up to 5 deals a month up until things slowed down. And then 2006, going into 7, we saw the market slow, and so we dove more into rentals. Initially, it was rent to owns. So we did a lot of that. But as the subprime mortgage industry fell off from that, we realized, well, this makes sense, but there's a different price point. So we got into lower end homes that were more like in the city, where there was a better balance between the cost basis and the rent values. Mm-hmm. And that led us into turnkey business because we had more deals than we could do ourselves. So we got into a turnkey business, which was a great learning lesson for me about what I don't want to do in business. As a deep visionary, running a turnkey business myself, trying to be the integrator of property management, construction, investment, a brokerage. So anyway, during that time, we started AREIA like 7 years ago. We got very connected in our community. A lot of our competitors here with bigger wholesaling operations, we all work, give each other advice and talk. I've done a lot of things like reach out and get into groups like the Boardroom, which is why we know each other. Which is our high level mastermind we're in. And just since 2014, I made a big shift, and I really realized that our business shouldn't run us, that we should run our business, and our business shouldn't own us. We should own it. Mm-hmm. And so I made a big shift, and it's been really, really great. And, I work about 5 to 10 hours a week in our operation. We have a 7-figure wholesaling business here. We also flip homes on the side. We have a partner in that. I don't hire a GC. I don't hire a sub. We don't deal with any of that stuff. Those houses are getting done without my input. And working on an information product, a training product for real estate business owners. Well, actually for any business owner. And probably most excitingly, dabbling in learning commercial from having just our connection. We could probably dive into this later, but it's really cool how that played out. We'll have to tell that story while we're on this podcast, but working on our first commercial deal with you guys.
Yeah, let's jump into it. We can get into that first, and then kind of dig into the residential side and kind of the scaling piece. But to give a little backstory for the listeners, I did a podcast probably 2 or 3, 4 episodes ago that kind of just dug into that deal a bit. But I mentioned our partners in Indy, so that's Steve and Brian there in Indy. You guys found the deal and were interested in moving your office somewhere, and kind of found it and stumbled across it. And we started working on it, probably February or so of 2019. And as of this recording, it's March 5th of 2020. So we're 13 months into this thing, but we have a closing date, a firm closing date established for the end of March here, March 30th. So we're ready to rock and roll. But Steve, why don't you kind of talk about the jump start on that deal and kind of how that came together, and how we worked it out, and maybe a little bit about the actual deal for the folks that didn't listen to the podcast 3 or 4 or 5 episodes ago. And then I can kind of take off from kind of where we're at and how it would look from our side of that perspective.
Yeah. So, I think there's 2 components to it. One was the fact that you guys and us were just being intentional. We're investing ourselves. We're in our mastermind. We kept talking about these quarterly meetings are great, but we got to connect. Right. And you guys took the onus to actually come travel to Indianapolis. I feel like that was in maybe October.
Sounds about right.
Is it fall?
Yeah, it was definitely fall. It was cooler out.
Yeah, and you guys went and we had fun. We hung out a little bit, but you guys also sat in a team meeting, got to meet our team, and we just shared best practices, which was super cool. And, we were talking pre-show about this. Like, literally the seed you guys planted with, we're going to be shifting for me to, like, really start running with commercial. By the way, we think Indy's a cool market. And after being in the business at that time for 15 years, almost, or 14 plus years when you were there, I have seen plenty of deals come and go, and I've just never thought that we would really mess with commercial. It wasn't on my radar at all.
Yeah.
So take that piece. That's one component. Set that aside. Secondly, over the next few months, Brian and I in our business here, we're like, man, we're spread out in different offices, and we don't cohabitate well. Like we're always booking conference rooms in different people's offices, and some people work from home, and just really needed a central location. So, around Christmas or towards the end of that year, we were planning for 2019, and we said, hey, we need a bigger office. If we're going to take on a legitimate lease, we might as well do that at a building we own. We know what we're doing in real estate. Makes sense. Literally not thinking of you guys at all. We're thinking to ourselves, we only need 2,000 or 3,000 square feet. But if we could get 8 or 10, we should probably do it. We could just sublease parts of it out. And if it's a value add play, that'd be really good. And it probably should be centrally located, not up in the suburbs where we live. It needs to be down where we're doing business, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, literally like the wish list. And so in February, I get a random wholesaler. He's not a random wholesaler. He's running around doing a lot of things, actually. But a guy I didn't see coming with this kind of deal calls me and says, it's not the normal residential house. It's, hey, I got this commercial deal. And I literally remember looking at that and being like, this is a complete waste of time.
Right. What are we going to do with this?
I was so getting out of the day-to-day. I'm like, I'll fart around with this. Like, let me look at this thing. And the more I looked into it, I'm like, there might be something here. It's a 10,000 square foot office building that needs rehabbed. It's on 3.5 acres with a 2,500 square foot retail strip that has Dollar General and Papa John's in it. It's already cash flowing as is with a vacant building.
Right.
We even talked about, now that I know better, there's potential to scrape part of it for new development. Maybe it's in a great transitional area where it's really close to more affluent areas. And maybe it's literally what we dreamed up. Right. And so I hit you up and we shared some emails, and it was a little slow in the beginning, I think, and it's been a long process, but it's been really cool. There's been so many nuances. I mean, we could do a whole nother show on just learning the negotiations of the timing, how things are different in commercial, but understanding the scale. And we also talked about things like, it's kind of cool when you got to drop $2 or $3 grand on a inspection or something, and you don't care because you're working on a multi-million-dollar deal. Versus like in a house, if you got to write a check for $500, you're like, oh, this is pinching my margin.
Yeah. Right.
So again, there's a whole nother show about that, of what we've learned, but it's been really cool for you guys. We would have never done this if you guys weren't there for us. And so we structured the deal. I'm sure you talked about that in the other one, set up so that we can partner on it in some way, shape, or fashion and come in on it as a part owner in the deal with you. So we brought the deal to you, but we get to be included in it, and we get to move our businesses in there and utilize it for other things we're doing. Plus there's cash flow off the retail center. It's just all around. Literally, this didn't happen if I didn't have my business in a position where I had available headspace, because I wasn't working 10, 12, 14 hours a day in my day, my day-to-day, my business.
Mm-hmm.
It also doesn't happen if you guys didn't take time to come out here and hang out with us and make that comment that this is where we're headed. Right. And so it also, because we trust each other, it's gotten hard because this has been a stop and start process between us all working together, being in different cities. If we weren't friends and trusted and knew each other, like to the point where we really know each other, I think this could have fallen out multiple times. Right. So that's my summary of it.
Yeah. I mean, so to give a little bit more backstory. So it's a 25,000 square foot retail center with a 10,000 square foot office building. That's kind of an outlot. So it's all in one parcel. It's about 3 acres of land. Pretty good property. They just built a new Walmart across the main road there, across the road that we're on, as well as a new Starbucks, a CVS on the corner, like a Hardee's, a Taco Bell. Yeah, some inline space. So it's a good area. It's probably like a B- area, but it's kind of up and coming. And from our standpoint, well, one, we really liked you guys, and we just came in town to see kind of how things were going with you guys and talk a little bit more. We'd been in the mastermind together for a couple of years at that point. And then randomly, I think an apartment deal popped up, and we're like, hey, guys, if you have something commercial, let us know. We were kind of looking at markets on a commercial basis that were within about 4.5 hours from St. Louis, where we're headquartered. So, Indy, Louisville, KC, even Nashville, but Nashville's just boom town. So I'm a little leery of that right now. I'll probably wait a little bit before we pop in there, but something along those lines. And then Indy just had a lot of really positive economic factors. You guys had, very good leasing. Your employment was way up. Your population growth was way up. So really from a economic standpoint, and from a market standpoint, your market is substantially stronger than St. Louis. It's not bigger, but it's got substantially more growth. So some very positive things going for it. So we're like, okay, well, this could be something. And then you send this deal over and it's like, wow, all right. And then from that point, from our standpoint, the biggest hindrance was, well, who's going to be the boots on the ground? Do we find a management company or what do we do? So the fact that we know, like, and trust you guys so much, and you needed an office space that can be, occupied or located in the office building. It was just it was a really, really good scenario the way it all worked out. So, and then I talked about this in the last podcast, but the real issue that the timeline took so long and it's been so start and stop is the office building was, I guess, majority occupied by a tenant, but they weren't really paying. They were paying partial rent, and the landlord was kind of limping along with them for a while. But, it took 6 months or so just to get that tenant out through the eviction process, because the seller had a purchase option in the contract that was just kind of a handwritten note. It was about, it was a mess, but so they dealt with that. So we were kind of starting to stop and jerky, and, it could have fallen apart a bunch of times, but thankfully it didn't. And I'm really excited about it. So we're about 25 days away from putting this baby purchasing this baby, and then kind of rock and rolling and putting about 400,000 improvements into it and getting it going.
Yeah.
No, it's a cool deal.
Yeah, we're excited about it for sure. And it's been a great learning experience, and it's opened our eyes. And through that, so if anybody's like thinking about transitioning, I'm not the person to coach you, Rob is. But what's been funny is now that a lot of our trainings, we talk about our reticular activating system, our RAS. The reticular is the gateway between your conscious and your subconscious. My subconscious is now open to the idea of discussing commercial real estate deals. So I've been seeing them everywhere. It's unbelievable. Like, you would think it's going to be so hard. Now, most of them probably suck and aren't real deals, right? But just having my mind open to the idea, like, oh, well, the way this has gone, we've learned so much, we'd be open to some other ones. So just as little as I told my acquisition guys in our residential business, hey, all these absentee guys that call in with 1 or 2 rentals, but then they really want to dump an industrial lot, or they've got a restaurant building, or whenever this stuff comes up, we were just marking them dead.
Right.
Right. And I just said, hey, from now on in our CRM, just assign them to me. Don't promise that I'm going to call them. Just say, hey, I got a guy on our team. One of the owners will look at this. Someone may circle back. They may not. No pressure. Just thanks. And they just put the notes in and they sign it to me. I've gotten 12 to 15 leads just in the last couple months assigned to me in our CRM that are, different types of deals. Now, I realize that these take longer. They're harder to work. There's a lot of nuances, but I guess the intentionality is the common thread through all this, right? That if you want to take advantage of opportunities or grow into commercial or change, just all this intentionality that's come through this whole process just opened my eyes to that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's just it, and that's kind of something that we're really planning to try and do more of, get this deal done. We've got another big deal in St. Louis here that we're closing in a couple of months. Got pushed off with some zoning issues, but if we can work with more folks kind of outside of our market, I think there's a lot of markets that are a little bit hotter, have more population growth, more economic growth that have some upside. So if there's anyone out there that's looking to do a commercial deal or has a deal in the pipe that they don't quite know what to do with, maybe shoot it on over and we'll take a look at it with you, and maybe there's something we can do. I think that's an avenue. We can't do too many of them at one time, but I think that's an avenue we're going to start kind of looking into more. And the key is to have somebody with boots on the ground, at least initially, until you really kind of get an understanding. And then from your perspective, now you're like, okay, well, I understand a lot more about commercial than I did before. And now you're looking at them, you're able to evaluate them and getting a lot of value out of it too. So I think it's a pretty good win-win for folks out there.
Hey, before we move on, let me say one other thing that will help. If anybody's thinking like they might want to do something like we are with you guys, Another big thing that I realized is in the residential space, after all the deals I said I did in the years I've done it, I'm the guy that knows everything, right? Like my comfortability comes from the fact that we've been there and done that, like done it wrong enough, long enough, and then you figure it out. Kind of stuff.
Right. I love that saying.
Here's what I'm learning though in this is I don't actually want to know all the stuff you know. I mean, I'm a little more inquisitive than most people, but I don't need to.
Sure.
I see this happen. So I'm on the plan commission in our city here in Indianapolis on a suburb called Fishers. Very progressive, one of the most affluent counties, Hamilton County in the country. They're basically rebuilding our entire downtown right now. And I get a front row seat to watch all this through the plan commission and the board of zoning appeals that I'm on. This happens all the time. Some dude comes in to petition to knock something down and convert it and develop and do some cool deal. Like it just happened with this little parcel that was stuck between an area there, and an IKEA just came to town. There's a Topgolf across the street that came, and there's this really cool area called the District where there's always restaurants and little boutique shops. There's a little parcel of land, and then there's a Kroger anchored strip. That parcel's been sitting there, and they need to connect a street through there. Mm-hmm. And that's been an issue, is they know there needs to have a street needs to run through there for fire trucks and all that kind of stuff, right? For code. Nobody's been talking about that. All these other cool things have been going on for the last like 3 or 4 years around there. Well, some random guy who's like me, I mean, you know a lot about commercial, so you're not a random guy. Like I'm a random guy, just calls up and meets with Pulte, who many of you guys have probably heard of as a national home builder.
Oh yeah.
And then they go to meet with an attorney here in town that does pretty much all the development work, legal work, knows everyone in the city really well. And then they went and met with the guys that own the property, and they just put it together. They're going to put like 50 townhomes in, and the price point's going to be like $350 on these little townhome minimum.
Yeah.
And they had to agree to put a road in, and there was a weird spot on land, so they agreed to put a dog park in on part of it. But literally the guy that procured that deal probably doesn't know anything about building the townhomes. He just brought Pulte in. Mm-hmm. Hey, can you develop this if I get a hold of it? And they called the land guy, didn't own the land, called that guy. And then they know the guy that knows the city, and someone told them, this is a guy that will tell you if you can do this or not. And if you do, he's the one you want to present it. And so seeing what we've done with you, if this helps anybody watching this, and then witnessing what I see in the city happen all the time, like it's not always the dude that knows everything and comes in and does it all. Everybody knows their part, and some guys just know how to put deals together. And they just call people. And so I think that's a powerful learning lesson out of this for anyone that's thinking about this. Like, because we trusted you, I literally, like, I'm learning about all the financing banking piece of this after it already happened because you're just teaching me. I didn't have to figure that out because I brought somebody in that knows that, right? And how to analyze the leases and the pro forma and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's worth addressing because I think in what you're doing with this podcast is going to be really powerful. And then a bunch of people are going to think they have to go out and learn all this stuff before they can do it.
Yeah.
Right.
Which you're nails on the head. I mean, I don't know if you remember, I used to listen to Sean Terry's podcast all the time, especially when I was getting into the business. And one of the big takeaways that I got from it was, hey, I'm going to tell you about all these different things. You don't have to know all the ins and outs of every single variable. You just have to know that it's out there, that it's available, that there's an option. I remember him talking about subject to and lease options and all of this stuff as kind of bolt-ons to a standard wholesaling deal. And it was just like, okay, hey, I'm going to go through it. You don't have to know every piece of this. Don't let it slow you down from taking action. Just know that there's the availability out there to do it. And that's kind of the same general premise here. It's just know that there is an ability to do it. And when you really think about it, entrepreneurs, their biggest value is just linking, like recognizing an opportunity, recognizing that there's something there, having that vision, and then linking the folks together that can do it. If you take it down to a simple fashion with wholesaling, all you're really doing is realizing there's folks that need to sell their homes fast and realizing there's folks that want to buy these homes and can close quickly. And you're marketing for the folks that need to sell quickly, and then marketing for the folks that want to buy them and do the rehab or do the work to get them up and going, linking those together for a fee. That's all it really is. You don't really have to know all the ins and outs. At some point, as you want to be better and run it like a business and really get your arms around it, obviously there's a bunch of additional layers that you have to dig into. But initially, that's kind of it. And that's really kind of what happened here, right? you knew a seller, you knew that you kind of needed office space, and you knew someone that knew more about it than you did, and put us together. And here we are. We got a deal. 25 days away, 3 weeks away from bringing this baby home.
Yeah. Last topic on this, I know we probably going to move to other things, but the other thing was I see happen a lot in the residential side that I think was key here was that the wholesaler was willing to get out of the way to let us talk to the seller. I was willing to bring you in right with the seller. And sometimes I think guys try to keep their place in line.
Mm-hmm.
And they think they're going to like get cut out. And if you're, if you do it right, yeah, it could happen, right? You got to be a little careful.
Sure.
You want to make sure you trust people. But I think that's another key is that this would have never come together if it was trying to be like pieced together with middlemen and the principals weren't actually talking.
Yeah. I mean, when you have the complexity of a deal like this, I'd say almost any commercial deal, I think, you've got to be comfortable enough to, get your agreement signed to make sure that your interests are secured. But that's exactly it. You can't stay in the middle if you aren't the expert putting it together. It just doesn't quite work. So there's a big takeaway there. I think that's huge. I mean, there's no way this deal could have probably come together with a person playing middle, especially without having a high level of expertise in what we're dealing with. It would have been really, really difficult. That's a huge, huge point. Well, that's cool. Well, I'm really, really excited about this. I think we'll keep people posted on it. Here in the very near future, we're gonna have to come up to Indy to do the jump start and kind of get this thing going. So maybe we'll shoot some footage and we'll set up a little podcast booth up on the roof of the office building again. Well, cool. Well, let's transition. Let's talk about more of the residential. It doesn't even really have to be residential. It's really about just kind of scaling a team. It just happens to be that kind of the team that you're building out and what your kind of new endeavor, but new passion is kind of digging into how you were able to build such a great team and the alignment and all the pieces that come together. Why don't you just give a little backstory on kind of what you're working on and what you're seeing and kind of how it's been working for you so far?
Yeah, cool. So if anybody if this will resonate, if anyone listening to this has hired anybody in the past for their own company, the typical way that people build a company, which is what I did the first 10 years in real estate, was I'm so busy, I need help. And there's two things that happen. One is you just grab somebody and you throw them in the mix very unintentionally, right? Very reactively. And you create these little mini-me's. And you're like, all right, this is what I've been doing. I need you to go do this. Mm-hmm. And then you just have them doing more of what you have them start doing what you were doing, right? The side piece that's a problem with all that is that you usually hire your sister's brother's cousin because this is some deep psychological stuff, but we probably don't think we deserve the person that is operating at the business where we hope the business goes, right?
Yeah. On a small business level, that's a big issue.
So like if you want a sales guy, you're thinking, I can't hire that guy who's making $250 at a medical device company. I can't, or $100,000 or whatever, because you're sitting there thinking like, that's all I'm producing, and I got all these expenses. I'm only netting $50,000 out of the $200,000 or $300,000 I made because I don't know where all my money's going, but I'm generating money. But I want to hire this guy because if he could come do another $300,000, I could go to $600,000 in business, and then I could go to like $1 million, and then you can scale this thing out. And that's traditionally what's happening with most people that are starting a company. But if you don't know who you are and where you're headed, it's really hard to get that person excited about it. And you also have this you're sabotaging it because you also feel like you don't deserve them to be there, right? So because of that, you don't run a really great ad. You don't market to the best salespeople.
Yep.
You don't get the right people. So you get your brother's sister's cousin or whatever, and they come work for you, right? And so now you have the wrong person. You have no idea if they're going to be a good fit or not. The only ability that they have is availability, usually, right? And so
I laugh because I've made this mistake enough times, so I feel it personally. We've gotten substantially better at it, but definitely made those mistakes out of the gate. First 4, 5, 6, 7 hires.
And then okay, got the wrong person probably, unless you just dumb lucked into the right person.
Yeah.
Right. Then they come in, and if they do a good job, then you give them 2 or 3 other jobs to do. So now you spread them too thin. So now they suck at the one thing they used to be good at.
Yeah.
Right. And then you're just delegating tasks to them. And they're just, what's funny is our company bloated the first time around to like, I don't know, 10 or 12 people in-house, like in the investment turnkey business that we had, plus 6 or 8 agents in the brokerage, plus 20 to 30 subs who just worked only for us through all the maintenance. Our management company at one point in time was managing 350 homes in 2014. And we helped one REIT client buy over 100 homes that year, just one of the clients on MLS sales. So we're acting as an agent. And we were, at some point in time prior to that, we had 20 rehabs going on at any time. And
rehab for rentals, right?
Yeah, for rentals.
Rehab for the rental. Okay, yeah, for the turnkey.
Yeah, and so they weren't, but they were getting bought at tax sale. So these things are like not even the tax sale, like the tax surplus sale. Like they were the rejects from the tax sale that like.
Yeah. No one else wanted.
Years, holes in the roof, and there's a reason you buy them for $5,000, So
well, yeah, no, I wasn't down, but I was trying to understand if that was like a separate business or if that was part of the turnkey business or not.
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
It was. But my point is, what's funny is they were terrible rehabs, right? Because they're full blown.
Yeah.
And so the reason I brought that up is at some level, I kept hiring all these people and I kept thinking like, oh, I'm hiring everybody to do everything. So I don't have to do anything. So I can like lead. I can be a leader. But literally because I was hiring the wrong people and I was delegating tasks to them, just asking them to go do what I would do and have them report back.
Mm-hmm.
The more people I hired, the busier I got.
Mm-hmm. Because
I knew in my heart somewhere, in my subconscious, I knew I still needed to be involved in what they were doing. And I needed them to report everything back to me. And so reality is I was just still doing everything. I just had people helping me do it.
Right. Absolutely.
And so a big epiphany that we had a few years back was delegating success instead of delegating tasks. So it's delegating. So you got to give authority and responsibility to the people to actually get the results that you need so they can be successful. Because if you think I'm the guy and this guy I hired is never going to be as good at this thing as me, you hired the wrong guy or you're training and managing them incorrectly. Eventually our people will be better than we would be at that job. Even if they're not as slick and smart and quick, they're going to be more focused than we would ever be, right? And 100%. So when you hire the right people, which is a lot about what our product that will be coming out this summer will be about, when you test their personality and you test their behavior tendencies, you test their cognition level to see where they process. Are they a super critical problem-solving person, or are they I want a checklist and I never miss anything because I just go, I'm a really slow processor. I just go through everything.
Yeah. Just task-based. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. And so when you're hiring someone, for instance, in sales, you want them to be extroverted and assertive. If they're just extroverted, they're going to go out and make friends instead of make sales.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone's going to love them. Everyone's going to tell them, you should be in real estate because you're good at making friends. But even if they're slightly assertive and they're way extroverted, that's not even a good salesperson, because what they'll do is come back and be like, well, we couldn't buy that house because I know we needed to pay 50, but the lady really needs 75 because she's got to pay for the cataract surgery, right? The reality is, I'm not trying to screw that lady. She has no money right now. I'm trying to give her 50 of the 75 she needs.
Right. And no one else is going to give her 75. So everybody loses. You guys lose. She loses. She doesn't sell the house. Yeah. It's a lose, lose, lose.
It's a lose. So, but you have to be assertive to realize that perspective, or else you just can't come to making that offer to get it done. Right.
Yeah.
So you can't help that person. Or extroverted people will tend to work with people who, like, if you own a trailer in a floodplain a mile outside of Indianapolis, I can't help you.
It's on wheels. Pull that thing out.
I guess we can move it down to 80. You're right. So when that person calls in, if my extroverted person just dives in because they're extroverted and they just want to connect with people, they're going to waste their time. They have to be able to qualify. Their assertion needs to step up and say, look, this person's in a bad spot with real estate, but I can't help them because that's not the kind of house we can buy. I got to move on. I got to tell them I can't help you.
Right.
Because when you say yes to that person, you say no to all the other people that you should be helping. Right. And so that's the dynamic I'm talking about with understanding. So if you're hiring a transaction coordinator in your business, or like an originator in a mortgage business, or like someone that needs to like be very detailed, you don't want them to be extroverted because they're going to stand around at the water cooler talking all the time, and you need them to sit at their desk, get their stuff done, right?
Yeah, knock through the task. Absolutely.
Yep. Or you don't want them to be too assertive because they're going to question what they're doing.
Yep.
You want them to be introverted and rule following, and literally come in. And that person also needs to, that kind of person also is going to want an hourly or salary pay, because they want to follow the rules. They want to know what they're supposed to do. They want to know how they're going to get paid. You can't put them on a comp plan that's variable.
Yeah.
The sales guy doesn't want to.
Absolutely.
What were you going to say?
No. Yeah. Just because they need to know where they are at the end of every month. They follow that process. They're process based. They can't, okay, well, I got some variability. I think I'm going to make this if this deal goes through. So I can, they just don't think that way. They're structured,
Yep.
It's just a different concept. So when you're going through this, I assume, are you using DISC or some other personality profile to be able to kind of segregate what skill set that those folks inherently have based on their personality type?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's several you can use, and the product is still getting built out right now. We're actually talking to Wonderlic about working a deal with them. They've got a really cool, if you guys maybe have heard of them, because they do all the testing for the NFL. Actually, here in Indy, in the Combine.
Really?
That in Indianapolis, the Wonderlic comes in. The guy that I spoke with this week, in fact, about maybe moving to their assessments, had been at the Combine 2 years ago and got to test the NFL guys. It was really cool talking to them about it.
That's super cool.
But one of the things they test is not just the personality pieces. So you can do something like DISC, like Tony Robbins. A million places have a free DISC. Like Tony Robbins has a place on his website.
Mm-hmm.
I can give you a link for the show notes if you want to put it in there. But we send it to people all the time and say, look, even if you can't afford to pay something, which could be a few $100 to $500 or more. I mean, if you hire a recruiter to do this, you're going to pay thousands, maybe $5,000-$10,000 to get a high level employee, right? If you can't do that, at least do a DISC to find out if the very basics of the person's personality seem to be like lined up, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's 2 points there. One, absolutely, because we've hired folks or we've interviewed folks that we do the DISC test and we're like, wow, that doesn't align anywhere where I thought they were going to be. We even had folks take another one just to make sure it wasn't like a fluke because it was so far off, just to reaffirm where it was. So, okay, that's not the right fit. And then additionally, like when you're talking about the expense of having the very detailed test, the predictive index, or some of these other more detailed ones, the expense of having to do that, it's high, but the cost of hiring the wrong person is substantially greater. I mean, exponentially greater. And take it from someone that's done it enough times. It's worth it to do that due diligence on the front end, specifically with kind of folks on the back end, folks that run task-oriented stuff, folks that are doing, operation-based stuff. On the sales side, you can kind of churn a little bit, and especially if you've got multiple sales folks. If you have one salesperson, that person needs to be the right person. You need to screen the hell out of them. But that's at least what we found, and through enough mistakes, you mess up enough times, you figure it out. That you put in that extra effort on the front end. You just have to. It's not worth messing that up.
Let me say two other things on that point too. So if anybody's watching this who's already hired and got multiple people, and you're going to be hiring more, or you really want to train and manage more effectively, the other piece to all that, like that's just the first layer that literally, like most small businesses never even figure out that they need to be assessing to match personality and behavior. But there's a second piece. There's like gas to throw on the fire, and that's cognition. And so it's not IQ. It's not someone's intelligence. It's literally their cognition level. And the best example I can give is if, like, sometimes somebody might be really extroverted and they might be pretty assertive and their resume says they're good at sales.
Yeah.
In sales, but they keep bouncing around from job to job. You might hire that person, and if their cognition level is low, meaning they process things slowly, they're going to be like, oh, I really want to do a good job and I love this, and they're happy in meetings, and then you tell them to go out and do their thing, and then they have a million questions. Or they're just like deer in headlights. like, well, it sounded when you were telling me I got it, but now that well, what do I do here? And what happens here? And what's next? And right, when they process things slowly, you're going to have a lot more arduous task of training that person and managing them because they can't just run with it. So what that looks like in sales is someone could be extroverted, very assertive, have sales experience. If their cognition level is below 50 percentile, like they're in the bottom half of the population with how fast they can process, and they're going to go buy a house, and you tell them, okay, go out and tell the seller, I know they want $100,000, but you're going to offer them 80 because there's 2 or 3 comps over here that basically support where we're at with our sale. Their house needs more work than they thought, and these are the 3 or 4 things in the house that need work. And we're paying cash, and we're not going to use an inspection. That sales guy walks in the door and looks at the guy, and the guy says, you know what, Rob, appreciate you coming over. I got to tell you, I know the comps are lower than what I want. I know my house needs more work than we thought. And honestly, I don't care. I just want $100,000.
Sure. All the time.
That dude shot he's dead, right? That sales girl or guy, like they're dead. They're like, that was my move. And they're thinking, well, literally like they would probably start like messing up their words, and they'd just walk out there with their tail between their legs and just get killed.
Sure.
Where someone with a high cognition is like, look, and they're like, look, I'm here to make a sale. This guy wants to sell his house. Let me think this through quickly. What he just said isn't rational. That makes no sense. How can I politely spin this back around and be like, well, hey, that's cool that you think that. But to me, that means that you're not really interested in selling because no one's going to pay that price.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff I gave you is cold, hard facts. Now, we can agree that you don't really want to sell your house. We can agree on that, but we can't agree that your house is worth $100,000. And you're basically agreeing that my dad is right. Like somewhere we're off and we need to talk about this. Like the faster thinking person, and you can gain a lot of rapport when you can spin something like that, right? And through that process, there's deeper trust. It makes them better at sales. And so that's the stuff I'm talking about with the cognition. And I think the second piece I wanted to add to all that is, and it's a lot shorter to say, this could be a whole other podcast, but when you have core values in your business, and you hire the right people who are doing the right things, that those core values actually they manifest in reality into a culture.
100%. Yeah. I mean, like, I think that's a piece that people absolutely underestimate. You know, we did it. And I know you still haven't come to St. Louis to reciprocate the meeting yet, but when you finally do, you'll see that literally every office.
I'm waiting for the bigger new office you guys are moving to.
Perfect. We'll see you in 5 months. No, I'm just kidding. But when you do come, you'll see that every office, every conference room has a framed, larger framed kind of breakdown of our mission and our core values and kind of what we stand by. And we spent a lot of time digging through them, trying to figure them out. And when we finally did, we're like, okay, yeah, these absolutely fit us. And then this is the piece that I don't think that people often do. Like when they're stuck in a tough situation, or they're stuck making a tough decision, or they're stumped on something, like more times than not, you're going to revert back to your core values. And you probably don't realize that you are, but if your core values are correct, then that should be really what's reinforced with you and kind of how you think, how you process, what are really, really important for the company. And if those are the right core values, then that's how you make decisions. And it's really easy to get past a tough problem or a tough decision because you revert back to them. And then the more you do that, the more you kind of ingrain it amongst your team. And to reinforce your statement earlier, then now that is reinforced amongst the team, now that's the culture. It's like, hey, listen, we are going to operate with high integrity. We are going to explain the process thoroughly so that the seller fully understands what they're getting into, because we don't want a scenario to come up in the 11th hour where they feel like that something wasn't fully explained to them, or they weren't brought up to speed fast enough, or they thought there was some kind of bait and switch. We just don't ever want to be in that scenario, because we want to run at a certain level, certain ethical or moral level, so that we can just get ahead of these and have this integrity. And, as we're thinking through processes, now the team is like, hey, guys, on our sales package that we bring to these appointments with with the sellers, let's include a settlement statement. Let's include a HUD so that we can show specifically kind of what could come up. hey, let's make sure that you're aware that if we make you a $100,000 offer, you're not having to pay closing costs and you're not having to pay commissions. You're not having to pay all that. But if you haven't paid your real estate taxes in 2 years, you're going to have an expense there. So don't be surprised when you see it. Or, if you have escrows for insurance, that may net out at some level on the settlement statement. So don't be surprised if that $100,000 purchase isn't exactly $100,000 if there are certain things that you haven't done, if you're behind on certain things. So, and that was a piece that actually was brought up by our sales team based on the kind of culture that had been instilled based on our core values, which was so impactful because it took us, I didn't really think anything of it at the time. I was like, hey, that's a good idea. Yeah, let's do that. And then we were talking with some folks, maybe at one of the recent boardrooms, and that came up and it all kind of came full circle. I'm like, yes, that we are there. That really worked in that scenario. So yeah, just to reinforce what you're getting at there.
Yeah. When the culture piece, when the core values manifest in a culture, because you got the right people, and then it's the right people doing the right thing, and then there's the culture, all that stuff. It literally, business starts to like more fall into place than fighting it to get into place. It's pretty neat. We had I think we got enough time. I'll give you a quick story where we saw this happen. 2 things happened in the same month a while back. One of them was we got on a short list. Three home buying companies were told, I'm going to basically take offers from you 3. I talked to 10 companies. I picked the 3 I want to get offers from. I'm just going to take the highest offer and I'm out. Mm-hmm. As long as it meets this number. So our guy couldn't meet his number, nor were we the highest. But he took the time to say, look, and this happens all the time. We say things like, if we are who we say we are, then this is what we need to do. Like that, to your point, right? Like when we reinforce the core values, then you say things like, if we are who we say we are, the decision's pretty, not always easy, but it's pretty simple to make. Like we know what to do.
Yeah.
So we provide value. That's our core. I mean, that's not our core value, but one of the core things we do is provide value to every seller, whether we buy their house or not, right? So our guy out of protocol said, look, I can't come up on price. I know this doesn't meet your criteria. But I just want to put one of the owners in the company on the phone with you. So he got Brian from our company on the phone. Brian's like, look, he's right. We can't come up in price, but I just wanted to call and see if there's something else we can do regularly. We cash advance before closing. We pay to move people. We deposit at the nursing home to move grandma. We do all these things around the outside of the transaction that make life easier for you. Maybe we can shift some of the money we're trying to give you. We can't give you more, but maybe we can shift it around to like make your life easier. Is there something else we can do?
Right.
Somehow, using rapport building tactics, right? Like Brian ends up talking because he's a closet singer. Nobody knows this about Brian.
Nice. I'm glad I know that.
Yeah. So this guy's a lead singer in a band that plays like 100 gigs a year. And he's like, look, I'm so busy. I don't have time to mess with this rental up in Indy anymore. Brian's like, you're a singer? No way. So he kind of hit it off. And the guy ends up saying, all right, well, now I like you. I'm just going to tell you, here's where the other company was with their offer, right? They're like $1,000 higher than you. I wasn't going to tell you this, but the third company I called them and they said, oh, who are the other companies? Is one of them Redevelop Indy, which is our company? And he said, yeah, it is. And they said, okay, well, they'll take care of you. We'll bow out. Nice. They pulled out a deal because they didn't want to bid up with us. You know what I mean?
I hear what you're saying. I think it's crazy, but yes, that's awesome.
I know, but it's so cool to be recognized, right? And so that happened on the phone, one of our acquisition guys, the same month, we had I'll make this one faster, a JV deal, which is where we're partnering with other guys to get a deal done. We didn't find the seller. Some other guys did. It's a rental. They live out of state. There's a tenant, 65-year-old lady. No one's told her what's going on.
Sure.
They bring the deal to us. We bring a buyer. Our buyer's ready to go. He's going to flip it, so he needs her out.
Yep.
She thinks she's going to stay as a rental. No one's told her any different. One day, my disposition guy's at the house, and she's crying. And we're supposed to close in 3 weeks. Well, unbeknownst to me, he got a little hot-headed, more than I'd like him to. I'm working on him with this. But he called the guys up, and he's like, what are you guys doing, man? You can't run over a 65-year-old lady like this. Like, we're out. I'm pulling my buyer out. We're killing the deal. Like, anyway, a day later, they called back, and they're like, hey, man, I really respect where you're at. And the wholesaler told Brad, my dispositions guy, look, dude, I appreciate where you're coming from. When we made a big mistake, we got lost in the idea of the transaction and we forgot about the people involved. And I want you to know you showed us something like that. These people matter that are involved.
Yeah.
We want to do business with guys like you. We're giving $1,500 of our assignment fee to her to help her move. And one of our guys is literally like helping her find a new place. And so what was really cool, so in one month, we had those two stories come through in the office. And so our guys hear that when it's not Brian and I telling them this is our core values, when this stuff happens from the outside in, they're like, this is who we are. Right. Yeah. To me, it's really cool. I told Kent, because like we talked about, we're friends from Boardroom, right? And so Kent Clothier, who runs Boardroom, is friends with us, but a mentor to us. Some of this came from Cabo in 2017 when we first met each other, right? Or first out in Cabo. We're sitting there, Kent's talking about providing value. And what do I stand for? What do I stand against? That affected me to the point where years later, I'm telling our guys, this is who we are. This is what we stand for. This is what we stand against. And then he goes out, gets pushed into a situation, stands up for us. Now there's some random wholesaler who I've still never met is treating every seller they come in contact with differently for the rest of their life because of that ripple effect.
Yeah, that's huge.
And like you can't beat that. And I know I went off on a wild tangent, a couple stories there, but like to me, I get super excited about that because now our guys are like, we really are who we say. We're not just saying who we are. Other people say that's who we are. Now you have to live up to it.
Absolutely. Well, now you've reinforced it, right?
Yeah.
It's like, anything, credibility or, your reputation. I mean, you're just building that out there on two different fronts. Obviously, this other group's bowing out because they don't want to compete against you. And then now you have this other group that's changing kind of their MO and the way they operate based on the impact or the impression that you guys provided. And that's huge. And it is a tangent, but that's freaking awesome. So congrats on that. That's a big thing.
I think to close that loop, that's the kind of stuff that really caught fire with us over the last couple of years is like we started using these assessments, cognitive testing, and it's like a secret sauce. And then we layer in core values to build culture, and then we motivate and train and compensate differently.
Yeah.
Like whether I'm going into commercial or whether I'm going to launch a training product or whether I run my RIA here in town or whether I've got my wholesaling business or a partner in the renovation business, that's the mentality that I'm taking everything right now. And all of it has to roll up to support me for what I want to do personally, which is create impact in people.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I don't like working like 12-hour days. So knowing I want to create impact, I don't want to work this way. I want to work strategically. It doesn't really matter what business I'm in. And so I think that's a kind of a good way to kind of summarize, like pull together what we've been talking about with things. And I think that's why guys like you and us gravitate towards each other because, man, I'm so impressed. Every time I talk to you, I actually feel horrible every time I talk to you on the phone because I'm like, you guys are buying another commercial property or we launched this new division or we got all these new agents. And I'm like, man, Rob and John are killing us with like how many things they launch and what they do. We're kind of lazy. But when I look what I'm doing compared to other people, I'm like, I feel pretty happy with it. But you guys are monsters and beasts with what you're doing. But the point is there's a drive behind, there's a purpose behind all of it, right? Like it's not just like we're just trying to do more to do more. So
no, I think that's huge. And that's a piece that I've really taken away from what you're kind of, or what you're doing and you're very intentional about saying, hey, this is what I want. I only want to work 10, 15, hours a week, or maybe less. And this is why. And, so like, doesn't, that's awesome. I mean, you're being very intentional about what you want to do and kind of building your situation around it. So, I mean, you're meeting everything, I think because I've thought a lot about this, especially I've heard you say it a few times now, and I've heard a couple other folks say it, and it's resonating. And, because it's like, hey, the old concept of work smarter, not harder kind of thing for a lot of folks. And where I'm at right now, and I think it'll change in a few years because I'm feeling it, but I'm still kind of in a, hey, work smarter and harder mode. It's like, okay, well, if I work smarter and I free up 10 hours, great, backfill it. Like find out like, what is it going to be and go, because that's kind of my goal right now is just to really run hard for another few years and get a bunch, get the 2, 3, 4 divisions that we really want to sustain up and going, get, a good quality operator at the helm of each of those operations, and then have the ability to kind of step back and really just kind of from a 10,000 foot view operate. But at this point, because a majority of what we're doing, the wholesale business is up and going pretty damn well. And, by the end of Q2, we'll have 160,000 feet of commercial space owned and managed. So we'll have that pretty well kind of established, kind of what we're looking for and how that's going to run and kind of how to process that and manage the tenants and all of that kind of stuff. But some of the other stuff, the brokerage, that's still in growth mode, and that's still in kind of early thing. I mean, we've done a good amount of business and we've had a pretty good level of success thus far, but it's still getting our arms around it and figuring out exactly what we want it to be. So not really at the point we can fully hand off yet, or even if we put someone at the helm right now, even though we are looking for someone, it would be a little bit harder to tell them exactly what we want and what we're standing for and all of that without having been in it for a while and kind of running it. So as we're kind of rolling out these divisions and we're doing all of that, that's just a big piece. So as a result, just, burning the candle at both ends until you can't anymore, and just kind of see where it shakes. But the point,
let me add.
What's that?
Go ahead.
Well, no, I mean, the point is just like trying to be intentional about what the goal you're shooting for. So, setting a goal and hitting it or exceeding it and kind of going, which, we're both doing. So I greatly appreciate the compliment, but I also greatly respect kind of your model as well. Cause I think at some point, the next handful of years, I'll probably be looking at that to some level. Oh.
Yeah. I mean, what I was just going to say is I'm 45. My kids are 13, and 17.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've only got a few more years to directly be in their life until they're moving on, right, and doing other things. And that's important. And being on these, a couple boards in the city, and there's other groups I'm invested in with my time. But I don't want to give the impression that those couple hours a day that I want to actively be involved in the wholesaling business, that's why I have time to work on a training product. I mean, I run there's a meetup about every week that I run that takes an hour and a half to 2 of my time, but it's getting there and getting out and preparing.
Yeah.
That can kill a half of one of my days. Right.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And so I like what you said about being intentional, because I've intentionally set these things up so that I only have a couple hours a day to do 2 or 3 different things. And then I probably spend more time on my personal self and my family than some people do, because of the age I'm at and where my kids are. Because I know I can run hard again, dude. What you don't know yet, because you're a little younger and your kids are younger, is I feel like I'm getting, in 5 years when I'm 50, I will run hard again. But when my kids are like going out, but it'll be different. It'll be like only do whatever I want to do because I've got enough of the basic stuff taken care of,
mm-hmm.
that I can run hard with stuff that's literally like fun for me.
Absolutely.
On my own. Right. So it's funny how we go through these iterations of things. But yeah, I know we're shy on time, but I wanted to make sure I said this before we finish. And I don't know what other topics or where you're at with the timing, but this podcast you've been doing is so good, because I think that a lot of people that have this messed up view of entrepreneurialism, and like, it's either really glamorous or it's all hustle and grind.
Mm-hmm.
Like, part of the reason you're so busy is because you're doing some really cool stuff.
Thank you.
Like you're in a ditch, digging, manure out, and it's just horrible, and it's 110 degrees outside. Like, yeah, you're burning at both ends of the candle, but you're doing stuff like this, like, or meeting with really high level realtors, or meeting with nursing homes, or looking at buying more commercial buildings from like really affluent, cool people. Like, right. Like, there is this fun piece to it. It's not horrible, but it's also not so glamorous that it's like, when I quit my day job and start my business, I'm going to work out. I'm going to have all this free time. You're going to work, because to your point, you got to run hard before you can give it to someone else. But anyway, I want to give you that compliment on the podcast, because I think this is a very practical thing that you're doing with the podcast. I think it's super, super helpful to give people like insight into like a day in the life of like someone legit. Right.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I mean, as it's just, you almost have to build in a 10, 15, 20% buffer for just the shit that pops up. and because that's what really overwhelms you when you're trying to run at 95% efficiency where your calendar's packed and then a big issue pops up. Like that's where it hurts. It's like talk about digging in the ditch. That's when you're digging in the ditch in the sun. It's like, holy hell, I've got to get these 3 things done in an hour and each of them take an hour or, whatever the scenario is, or it's like, I need some mental time or I need to jump on this issue, but something's getting pushed off. So it is a grind. It's awesome. I mean, I don't think I'd do it a different way, but it certainly is. But I greatly appreciate the compliment there, and we'll keep pushing forward, try and get some good info out to folks. And I think what you're doing here is huge. You really don't hear of a whole lot of folks that think about the business the way that you do, especially kind of being intentional about it. Maybe because, or I don't know, maybe not, but maybe just the way you think, but maybe because you said that you had your turnkey business and you grew it up to having, 10 employees or whatever. You had that company bloat as it related to it. And now you can kind of take a lot of that knowledge and say, hey, this is where we went wrong. This is where we really want to be right. And then even refine that deeper with culture and, your core values, lining up your kind of the alignment of the team, kind of really focusing on making sure that the personality profiles match up so that you're not kind of battling against each other along the way. Everyone's kind of rowing in the same direction. And I think it's huge because a lot of entrepreneurs get into the business, kind of the way you explained, and very few look at kind of exactly where they want to be. They might say, hey, I want to do 100 deals or 200 deals, or you might be in a totally different industry, but they don't really think of what the team has to look like to get there. And a vast majority of entrepreneurs are more visionary than operations-based. And even if they are operation-based, there's a fair chance that they don't have the management and leadership skills that are necessary to build that team out. So knowing kind of where you need to lean and where you need to further expand your mind and grow and train yourself, or hire someone or bring on a partner that has those skill sets so that you can focus on kind of what adds the most value to the company and to you personally, while the other side of the business is operating in the way that it needs to. I don't think a lot of people think of it that way. And I think it's really, really important. I think it's really cool the way that you're explaining it. And I guess you're working on this, this rollout to kind of train people how to do that. I think it's really cool because I don't know of anyone else that looks at it like that and that's actually kind of providing that or talking to folks about that, especially being in a business and not having some HR consultant come in, which is entirely different, So yeah, I think what you've got going is really, really cool. And I think it's really impactful the way that you're kind of explaining it and rolling it out.
Cool. Yeah, I appreciate that. We're excited. That's why we took the industry specific real estate stuff out of it. There'll be real estate stuff in it, excuse me, in this first go around, but it's any small business, right? And I think a lot of change can be impacted in the world through business owners because we interface with, we have our families, we have our employees families are directly related to how we treat the employees. Then we have our clients, the clients have their families. Then we have our vendors, the vendors have their families. And then we interface with other business owners like D2B. So
we masterminds and passing on best practices and cultural things that each of us have internally, and then trying to pass that on. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, literally, we were talking about this stuff with one of the guys when you and I were in Nashville this last week. And this guy, it was funny because we were talking to him, and what came out of it was like, he had this big screw you number. He wanted to do 40 million in business with his roofing company. And because of the way it came out at dinner, I think a few glasses of wine had to loosen up the conversation a little bit. But
yeah.
It was like, look, man, my goal is because my dad and other people in my life who have influence told me I wasn't going to amount to anything. And to me, a $40 million company seems like amounting, so I'm going to do that because of that. I'm like, but he's also working 14-hour days, and he's really working, not taking care of his family because he didn't feel taken care of in his family from his dad. And I'm like, bro, like literally you're doing the same thing. Like if you were setting your business up to support you, what would it look like? I wouldn't work 14 hours a day. Well, so now you're telling me your goal is to make 40 million, but it's to make it in an untraditional way. That's not even the right way to get to 40 million. You got to grind. That's hard.
Yeah.
That is paying up for 14-hour days minimum, right? 7 days a week, in my opinion, probably. But the whole conversation boiled down to understanding what he wants first, and then what kind of time and money do you need to fuel that in your life, and then you set your business up to give that to you, and that drives, right? And so that drives the revenue number. And so what came out of that was this business talk turned into, he knows how his dad treated him. He sees how his brother's treating his kids. And what we talked about was he's going to treat his kids different, so they don't know any different, that when they grow up, they'll treat their kids different. So we were like, listen, your revenue model directly affects your grandchildren's well-being. I mean, that's what, like, literally that's what this stuff is about. When you get to, and if you don't make it about that, you're either going to dumb luck your way into happiness, or you're not going to be happy. You'll be resentful. You'll have bad relationships, probably have health issues behind it. You'll have mental health issues because of the relationship, and the health issues will push you with regret, resentment. And so I'll get off my soapbox now, but you fired me up when you were talking about, like, it's all about impact, and business should be designed to create the impact in the business owner's life that allows them to be the best version of themselves and the best version that their family and their loved ones deserve. Not just, I made a bunch of money, so I didn't hear my kids complaining when they were going to private school and had nice cars. Like, you hear a lot of guys say things like that.
Because that's what they think the kids want. And they're really doing it for themselves. It's absolutely, that's what always happens, right? And it's balancing that is just so critical and so difficult. And, most people don't even do a business plan. But the folks that do, they miss that step. And that's kind of what you're getting at here. It's kind of like incorporating the business plan in with a life plan. So you have like a Venn diagram, for example, you have the two circles, right? And they overlap at one point. Well, like if you have the life plan and the business plan, you overlap them, like that's the sweet spot. That's the part that you're really going to have to work to get to. And I sure as hell don't have it totally figured out. I can tell you I'm burning the candle. I can tell you I'm burning the candle at both ends, because I'm trying to make both work and working 12-hour days, 14-hour days, and then also making sure that you're home before the kids go to bed. So what's that mean? It means you're waking up at 3 or 4 a.m. and banging it out then, when it's not impacting the family so much, without totally dismantling your health, trying to sneak that in. So it's I think it's an ever-changing, ever-growing thing. But the first step is just talking about it, because I don't think anyone ever talks about it. No one gives the advice that you just did, like, hey, really think this through. Because to the gentleman that was trying to build a roofing company out, it's like, all right, you're doing this because of what you think, but it doesn't align with what you're saying. Maybe revisit that a bit. And okay, once that's the case, don't build your company. Like, once you have your life plan, you really know what your why is, and you really know kind of where you're going, then overlay what the new business plan is going to be, and then make sure you're hiring the right folks so that you can actually run that out. Otherwise, it's going to take you twice as much work to get to the same point, because you didn't do it right. You hired the wrong people. They're not aligned. You're always having to correct all the stuff they're doing. You're getting in arguments. Like, they're not inherently running in the same direction you are. Much like the story you said about the sales guy or the dispo guy that pulled out of that deal because it didn't culturally align. Much like the guys my sales guys that mentioned, hey, let's try and get this HUD document or the settlement statement viewable in advance, so that we don't have these shits that come up that ruin the relationship and cause these issues down the road, because we don't want to have that be a thing. Let's just make sure we're up front with everybody. Just kind of making sure that those core values are established, so that folks are rowing in the same direction. So no, there's a lot there. I kind of just got on a tangent too, but this is why it's going to take. That's why it can't be 45 minutes, Steve.
This is good.
Yeah, this is solid.
We should start a mini series, and then this will be part one. Just every couple months, we'll just get on and add to the mini series, the drama of you and I just talking.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll just list a bunch of topics, and I'll be like, okay, this one's good for Steve. This one's good. Mini series, go.
No, that's good though. I like everything you said, and I'm not going to start off on another tangent, but I just think there's a lot more to this than people think. And the point that I was thinking of while you were talking was, most people start a business because they're running away from something else instead of running towards something. I'm just insinuating that you should I'm fine if you're running away from corporate America because you hate it, because it doesn't align, but just don't start running until you know which direction you should head, because you might be running away from where you're hoping to end up instead of running towards it. And you might be making things work. Because there's not working at a job you hate isn't so bad when you get money wired into your account every 2 weeks on your salary.
Mm-hmm. 100%.
And they're not going closed and they're not going bankrupt and they don't hire crazy people because they know what they're doing. Like, you may not like everyone, but starting a business is not for everyone. And it's a lot of risk, and most people shouldn't do it.
There's no doubt about that. Yeah. You said something earlier, like recording a day in the life of, like, I wish there was a way to really like see all of the behind the scenes stuff, all the crazy stuff. Cause I don't think people would like, I don't think they'd believe it. I think they'd think it was like a reality show. Like it was fake, like it was staged. I mean, the amount of crazy stuff. And we just had someone.
Oh, go ahead. You got someone what?
Well, I was telling you this in Nashville. And we had someone, we think, someone lit the garage on fire at one of our buildings that we happened to be at, that my car was parked in. So the damn garage burns down with my car in it. Like in the middle of it, whether it was arson or whether it was an accident, I don't know. I think I know which one it is, but there's no confirmation. But nevertheless, like, no one expects that. I mean, that was so absurd. And as you know, anyone that's in real estate, like, the garage is fine. I can replace a garage. Losing the car, like, it's like my second office. It's a very impactful thing to lose the car, especially to a fire, because like your stuff's all either gone or just smoky as hell. Like, you can't use it any longer, having to go and get new car seats. So I've got young kids, like having to either get a rental car or go buy a new car, but then getting it set back up and then fighting with the insurance companies. Like, the amount of time that's associated with that was just silly. And that's just one thing, right? I mean, there's 100 of these crazy oddball scenarios that just pop up. And the more business you do, the more oddball scenarios pop up. So it's a wild and crazy ride. But, well, cool. Hey, in the interest of time, I've got one more question for you. And then if you've got anything, let me know, and then we'll conclude here. But you mentioned something that was really, really awesome earlier, and I wrote it down and I meant to circle back on. So personality testing, a lot of people know about that. A lot of people like dig into DISC test analysis, and Tony Robbins has his free version, and there's more, in-depth versions that you can buy for $65, $75, $80 a pop. But, and then, you've got predictive index and some other more intense, more thorough personality profiling, and then, but are you using something in particular for the cognition testing, or is that something proprietary that you're kind of doing as part of your platform, or is there a specific group that you could recommend for people that want to dig into that?
So every time we use it, and it's always through a third party that's usually associated to whoever we're doing our assessments with. So for instance, we're working with Wonderlic and a couple other companies right now. Burke is another one. It's all built in. So in fact, Wonderlic has the personality stuff. They have the cognitive stuff. They also do motivation testing. Like, how motivated is this person to actually succeed at the kind of things you need them to? It's kind of cool. That's what's pulling us that way a little bit. Predictive Index has been my favorite for years, and it's also built in. They have their own cognition testing. It's separate.
Okay.
And so there's a cadence to how you want to do this too. Like, so you don't get, when people hire, they get inundated with resumes and they don't have time. They think they don't have time to hire, and you don't just cognitive test everyone. You only want to test the people that make it through the other gauntlet, right?
Yeah. That's at the end.
So you don't want those tests to all be in one. I mean, the cognition is like, this person's, these 3 or 4 first things have matched up. We think they're a legitimate candidate. Let's just test them, because if their cognition is too high, they're going to be constantly questioning everything going on. Because they're going to have, they're like me. My cognition is really high. And trust me, I'm not bragging. Like, it is literally a hindrance to me all the time, because no one can tell me anything without me like rethinking it and be like, oh, there's a better way. I literally think there's a better way.
100%. I mean, no one hears you more clearly than me. Like, I am the same way. And so much so that when I'm talking to people, I'm like, hey, listen, this is just how I operate. Don't take it the wrong way.
Don't take offense.
I just have to dig in a little bit deeper to make sure that, like, the scenario that we're explaining, it directly aligns with what we're talking about here, so that we're not out of alignment. Like, Just dig.
And by the way, I listened to you while I was thinking about this book I read and this podcast I heard. And 3 years ago, this one thing happened. I know this other guy that kind of does what you do, and I just put it all together in like 13 seconds. And I came up with a 3-step way that you can improve your. And people are like, "What is wrong with you?" Like my wife doesn't even want to help me with anything anymore because she knows I'll just redo it.
Oh, but that's so funny. Yep, I actually you're spot on.
You got to learn how to drive the Ferrari without because our Ferraris don't have brakes is the problem.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to say though is when your cognition is really high, you question things and you overanalyze and like you get paralysis by analysis and these things happen. If your cognition is too low, you just don't quite get it and you don't feel confident to go because it's not clicking. So there's a sweet spot. So in sales, you want someone to be like in the 50 to 75 percentile of the population of the world if their cognition above average, but below high end. That is a sweet spot for someone in sales. Someone that's doing administrative things, you probably want them to be around the 50 percentile because you don't want them to be uber critically thinking. You want them to be like really slow processing so they don't miss details, right?
Yeah.
At 25%, they're so slow they can't ever get it.
Right.
So 50 percentile is like average human being. A little higher for sales, a little lower for administration, right? So to answer your question, most evaluations that you use out there that you're paying for will have some component. Predictive Index has their own, Wonderlic has their own, Burke has their own. So that's a piece that you want to look for because if you're using personality and behavioral testing, you're like ahead of the pack by like 85, 90%. And if you work the cognitive testing in, you're like 98% there. And if the core values are a match, like it's a 99.9%
golden rock. Yeah.
That person will make you millions of dollars over their lifetime in the company. So
no, that is so cool to hear. Yeah. We've done DISC forever. We've done Predictive Index for a while, and I didn't really even realize they had a cognitive section or that's being provided. And I'm not noticing it. Maybe I'll have to go back and dig into that. I really, really like that. That's a big takeaway.
We hired it. I just want to not to interrupt you, Rob, but we hired against it twice just to tell you guys a live example, like a live example. We two people in the last 2 years for sales, we hired against it. They were assertive and extroverted. Their assertion was high, their extroversion was high, and they were both around 15 to 20 years in real estate. Yeah. Very high level. They both tested in the 35 percentile of cognition, and our Predictive Index gal at the time was like, this is kind of a problem, but because they have 20 years experience, neither one of them worked out. I mean, I am so in favor of doing that extra added step because, like, for instance, the sales guy we hired we fired him in 9 days, the one guy.
9?
He literally sat down and kept going, where did you say you click on the CRM? Are these old leads or new leads? Well, when I get done with these leads, what do I do next? Well, wait a minute. Remind me again. Do I go to this one? It's just the whole first week of Brian and I sitting with him was that all day.
Right.
We were like, meet to get on the phone. I got 2 hours to do phone calls with you, bro. Let's do it. And an hour and 45 minutes in, we're still explaining how the CRM works. I'm like, we just had to rip it on that guy. The other gal lasted for a long period. She was a great gal, but we wanted to shift her from what we hired her for to be more proactive in sales than reactive on the disposition side.
Mm-hmm.
And she operated okay when we used to buy every house and sell them as a listing.
Yeah.
But her lack of cognition showed when we shifted her model to doing something different. Couldn't do it.
Couldn't adapt.
We had to move on. And I've just seen it. And we've also used to hire in the past based on not using personality tests. Like, to me, that is, we're working on this marketing piece, and I'll cut it off in time, but we're working on this marketing piece for the product. But an analogy that I'm coming up with for this piece is this video that's on social media is going to be, if you had this dish that your grandma made that you love, and all you've ever done is eat it and look at it. And someday she's flying in town, you want to honor her, and all these people are coming over, and you're going to make that dish. And you literally try to decide to make that dish by going to the grocery store and just looking at everything to try to decide what you need to put into a bowl, mix it up, and then guess how long you should cook it.
Right.
That's not even reading the back of the label. What's really, you're just reading the front that says, oh, the front little marketing label, right? Like just hiring someone based off sitting down and interviewing them only is like that. It's like literally trying to cook food with just whatever you think looks like.
It should go in there. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll just throw it in there. See how it tastes. So I'll leave you on that because I could talk on this forever. I mean, in the middle of building this product, I'm so passionate and into this right now that if we ever want to do a team building, maybe when we launch it, we'll do another podcast. But anyway, I'm more than covered. You said you wanted to circle back, and you asked if I had anything else to offer. I don't. I got to stop because I'm blocked too. It's been an hour now, and I was like, we're going to do this in 45 minutes.
I knew. As soon as you said that, I was like, awesome. Let's see. I'll be racing against it. Sweet. Well, awesome, Steve. I greatly appreciate it. Thanks for coming on. We'll, once you get that thing up and going, then, we'll jump back on and tell folks how they can find it if it's the right fit for everybody and it's the kind of avenue that you're going. But yeah, I'd love to do that. Thank you so much for coming on. It was really, really good information. Greatly appreciated.
Yeah, man. If anybody wants to try to connect, Facebook's great for me. And then Rob, I'm always here. Keep up the good work on the podcast. I love being on. I love watching them. So
absolutely. So Steve Richards. Yeah, definitely. Probably next 2, 3, 4 weeks here. So Steve Richards with Redevelop Indy. How they on Facebook? How do they find you? Just Steve Richards, and it's actually Steve SM Richards from Indy is my Facebook username. But if you just look up Steve Richards, you'll find me on Facebook in Indy. Boom. There we go. All right, everyone. Thank you very much for listening. Hopefully you got some great information here. Tune in if you liked it. Like I mentioned, please like it and subscribe on iTunes or any platform that you're listening to it on. Please follow us on Instagram and on Facebook. And until the next episode, thank you very much. Here we go. Hey, guys. As always, this episode of the podcast is sponsored by Bottleneck Real Estate Virtual Assistants. These guys are fantastic. We've been using them for years in our business. They've really helped us scale. Hopefully you guys like them as much as we do. If you want to get in touch, it's bottleneckrealestate.com, bottleneckrealestate.com, and I think you will be very happy with them. If you got some good quality content out of that, if you think it would help anybody, please go to iTunes or SoundCloud or whoever you're listening to this on and subscribe to the podcast. Also, please give us a 5-star rating. It really helps get us out there. If you do subscribe and give us a 5-star rating, take a screenshot of it, email it over to info@robertheider.com, robertheyder.com, and register for you guys to win a free one-on-one coaching session with myself or one of our guests. They were nice enough to give up some of their time, so thank you for that. Also, please follow us on social media, Robert_Heider at Instagram, Robert_Heider at Instagram. We'll drop some really quality content there. Also, I almost forgot, if you guys want a free commercial real estate guide and commercial real estate analysis tool, just go to the website, robertheider.com, fill out that brief little form, and we'll email that over to you. It's a really, really good tool just to be able to analyze deals quickly, understand kind of what's going on, see if it's actually a deal. All right, guys, thanks. Until the next one.